I think UIs in video games are really interesting as they capture the heart of what UX is really about. Video games are pieces of software that the developers are trying to convince you is worth your time. Video games by definition are not utilitarian. The only objective, mostly, is to have fun and enjoy yourself. You're not really trying to achieve something by playing most of the time. That means the designers have to be really on the button when it comes to crafting that enjoyable experience. I'll talk more theoretically about this another time, but for today, we're counting down my top 5 pieces of UI design in Civilization VI. But first, let's talk about an honourable mention. The honourable mention today goes to the map search functionality. The map search is actually a really powerful tool and definitely a great shortcut. You can search for specific things that you are looking for, like strategic resources, and these will highlight on the map here and here. It's also quite forgiving about how you spell these, so horse and horses both return the horse resource, which is great. But you can also search for more generic things, like natural wonder, for example, and it will go and search for the natural wonders around the map. You then have these left-right cursor arrows to be able to take you directly to those natural wonders on the map to be able to see where they all are. At number 5, I'm putting the quick prioritization toolbar. If you click on an individual city, you will have these indications as to how much of each resource that city is generating. Now, it would have been very easy for the designers to have called that job done. You can see what the city is producing for each of your major resources. The designers here took a step further and said, well, actually, many players don't want to dive into the nuts and bolts of how they are allocating individual people, so we're going to make these interactable buttons and allow the user to prioritize science or prioritize production. And it's just an incredibly easy way, a very easy shortcut to be able to get to prioritizing the production that you want to prioritize. At number 4, I'm putting the lenses. Now there's 2 kinds of information overlay on the hexes. There's the resource information, which you can toggle on and off with the map options, show grid, show resource icons, show yield icons. For information which is varying over time, they've put those into lenses. Now this is a really good idea because lenses show you things that are very contextual. They're things that you're not going to want to just toggle on or off, but they are things that you're going to want to be able to access frequently enough, but transiently enough that you want to be able to turn them on and off easily, rather than them just being a backstage option that you either have on or off all the time. An example is the religion lens, which shows you the current state as well as the spread of all of the religions in the area. Now, obviously, you wouldn't want to play the game with this on all the time. Ignoring the fact that it's black and white and color-coded, you wouldn't want an overlay like this all the time. There's just way too much information, and you're not thinking about religion every single turn of the game. Similarly, continent has particular benefits to you depending on your civilization and depending on the perks that you have selected as part of your government, but you don't need to know where the continent borders are every single turn. So having these lens overlays that you can turn on and off and have them easily accessible makes it to number 4 on my list. Number 3 on the list is where we start getting a couple of things that are a little bit more subtle. If you click onto an individual city, you're going to get some indication about the buildings, the amenities, the housing, but also how many religious citizens you have. I think a very nice touch on the UI is that if there is a dominant religion in the city, the icon for the religious citizens matches the icon for the dominant religion in that city. If I go to Brasilia, which has Islam as the dominant religion, the icon is different. Now this doesn't quite work in all circumstances if there isn't a dominant religion. I'll come on to that in one of my nitpick lists. They could have stopped short at using the generic religion icon, but I think it's a really nice touch. They went that extra distance to put the dominant religion icon into that city's information. Number 2 on my list is going to be the color coding of the buttons on the left to right diagonal. The UI in Civilization 6 is split into 4 quadrants. Up here you have what your civilization is working towards. In the top right hand corner you have how your civilization compares to other civilizations. In the bottom left hand corner you have your map options, and in the bottom right hand corner you have what you are going to be doing this turn. The color coding of these is you have a lot of blue and white in the top left and blue and white in the bottom right, and brown and blue in the bottom left and brown and blue in the top right. This is because on a turn-by-turn basis, most of your actions are going to be dominated by things that either require you to interact in the top left or the bottom right of the screen, and so those have the higher contrast color scheme so that those buttons pop more in the interface. By contrast, the map options and the overall civilization progress information is this muted brown color that blends in with the fog of war colour of the map. This lets it dissolve into the background and become a lot more subtle in the interface, keeping the user's attention on what is really important on a turn-by-turn basis. Because of that, this earns a well-deserved number 2 spot on my list. Finally, number 1 on the list, and it's going to go to these 6 buttons on the city screen. These 6 buttons have a lot of UX packed into them. Firstly, they are in order for where they are going to appear on screen when you interact with them. You have the city details on the furthest left, you have purchase hexes and manage citizens in the middle, and then you have purchase an item with gold, purchase an item with faith, and change city production. When you click on these buttons, you get from right to left a right hand blade, a right hand blade, a right hand blade. Manage citizens is in the middle of the screen, purchase hexes is in the middle of the screen, and the toggle city details is on the left hand side. So you already have a very subtle nod as to where you are going to be interacting with these menus when you open them. What really sets this apart, and this is clearly a conscious decision by the designer, is the toggle city details button is deliberately separated from the other 5 buttons in this user interface. The toggle city details gives you way more information than the average player is interested in when they're playing this game. By setting it apart from the other buttons, the designers are subtly implying to the user that one of these buttons is not like the other 5, and whereas you are being expected to use these buttons, the one on the furthest left is set apart, it's on its own. The fact that it's a left-hand blade rather than a right-hand blade indicates to the user that this is something different. They don't necessarily need to interact with it. Putting that tiniest of gaps in is what elevates this to my number 1 spot for great UX. That concludes my list for the top 5 UI and UX elements in Civilization 6. What did you think? Did you notice all of these before watching the video? Do you have other pieces of UI in this game that are your favourite? Do you disagree with anything I put on the list or think that I missed something? Let me know in the comments down below. If you thought any of what I said was interesting, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. It's a new channel and it helps me a lot with the algorithm if you do. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.